Why, hello. We're back with a answer time, although this one's a little different because I was given a general topic that the person wanted to know more about, not a specific question, which works. Hopefully, will raise questions, but we'll just go from there. Now, what was this topic? The topic was mead because they were at a meadery, place that makes and sells mead, and realized they didn't really know much about it. Now, mead is a odd duck. Why is it an odd duck? Well, it's really, really, really old, right? Like the ancient Egyptians were drinking beer. Mead is older, probably. It's so old, we're not really sure when it started because mead is so simple. All you need for mead is water, honey, yeast, which is in the air on most places around Earth, and time. So there are theories that mead predates humanity. That mead literally was first made and first discovered when some homo progenitor human thing, um, homo as in the classification, um, of humanity, like we're Homo sapiens, Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalis, or whatever it is, so on and so on. But anyway, you that the first instance of mead was there's theories that it was probably a beehive that got filled up with rainwater and then sat there for a while and fermented, and then someone opened it up and goes, "Oh, what's this?" Mmm. Literally, that could be the first existence of mead. Um, Now, what we do know is that I mentioned the Egyptians had beer. The Egyptians also had mead. Mead was, in fact, um, the original, most prevalent drink in the ancient world. The Greeks were wild on mead. There's talk about it being like so. The Greek gods theoretically drank ambrosia, and it was this sweet nectar, and that was supposedly all they needed to sustain themselves. There's theories that that was supposed to be a mead type thing. In the time of Homer, I'm trying to remember now, they mead was well at that time mead was considered the drink. That was the alcohol in the time of Homer. Uh, Later, you start getting wine in the Mediterranean, and that pushes out mead. We're going to talk about why mead gets pushed out of places in a minute. But so you have wine, it pushes out mead. But we have further record of mead up in Northern Europe, right? Um, in fact, it lasts in Northern Europe far longer than it does in Southern Europe as the alcohol to drink. And especially up in the Nordic areas, they were crazy about this stuff. They drank it heavily much later than the rest of people in Europe, and in in their mythology, what was it? It was mead was the drink of like poetry and wisdom or something like that. Um, but basically, there was a mead that you drank it and became the greatest poet, like unbeatable, and so mead was just built in to their the way they did things. Slowly, mead got pushed out up in Northern Europe by well, ciders and beers, ales. Again, now why? Why would this quasi magical, according to everyone, drink that was popular everywhere and could clearly be made everywhere get pushed out? Well, there's two related reasons. The first is it's a heck of a lot easier to grow a field of wheat or a field of barley, grow some hops. It's a heck of a lot easier to do that. A orchard of apples, a vineyard of grapes. Those are reliable things that are far easier to maintain than vast quantities of bees. Now, there were a lot of people who played with bees that had small time honey operations going. In fact, there's it was like folk knowledge in England around like say around 1000 AD that if you saw a swarm of bees, you would going across your land, you would take up a fistful of dirt and gravel, and there was a little prayer you'd say over it, and you'd throw it at the bees, and then the bees would be yours, and it was like a quasi-religious, quasi-magic spell. What was actually happening was they would be moving in swarm when the whole hive was moving, and so they were protecting the queen. You threw something at them, they took it as an attack, and they would go to ground, and that's where they would build a hive because this is where like nope, nope, we're under attack, we got to build a hive here, and then it was on your land. So pretty mundane, but actually a nifty tip. But anyway, so you could have a hive or two of bees, but to grow to farm enough bees to feed a alcohol fueled nation, because most nations were kind of alcohol fueled, an alcohol fueled nation, especially in Europe. Um, the actually that'd be a really interesting thing is to you could probably do a history of Europe by alcohol invention and trading, and you would see a lot how a lot of relationships, agricultural, economic, and political and strategic, are just really weirdly, oddly intertwined with alcohol. It's very strange. But anyway, um, easy enough to have a hive, easy enough to have two or three hives, enough hives to say just for London, say how many people are drinking every day in London in the Middle Ages even. So when you'd be transferring away from Mead, be a couple tens of thousands, and assume they're drinking every day and they're not just drinking one glass. I mean, that's a lot of honey right up front. More so because it takes way more honey than you'd expect to make mead. So I think it was for like, oh, I can't remember. There's a recipe that I found for mead, an old recipe, but it was for a single batch. So like, think like a a small barrel, right? Right. Nothing fantastic. Just a small barrel for your mead. It was like 10 gallons of water. So, good amount of water. And 25 pounds of honey. Mead just priced itself out because honey was fairly expensive. It's not easy to mass produce, but grain and fruit is. I mean, fruit less so than grain, which is why, for the most part, wine is more expensive than beer. But honey's harder than that, so it just priced itself out of the market. Furthermore, once you get like the American trade going on, discovery of the New World, you have plantations growing sugar, and then you get rum. Now, rum, that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother very interesting history, where rum was made of a waste product. It's so you make the sugar, and you end up with molasses, right? Now, you make your refined sugar, refined cane sugar, and what's left over is molasses, and it's got a lot of sugar content in it, but you just can't get it to crystallize in the same way. And there was a lot of people who were like, I don't know what we're doing with this, and it was like pig slop, whatever. Eventually, it started getting into things like Boston baked beans have molasses because they did a lot of trade with the Caribbean, so they got the molasses for cheap, and then molasses ended up being a major part of New England cooking, as an example. But there was a governor of Cuba who knew that alcohol was very useful in trading with the Native American peoples, especially in the what is now the southern United States. And he's like, how do I get a lot of alcohol for cheap? And he's like, well, we have all this molasses that we're not doing anything with. I wonder if we could make alcohol out of it. And thus rum was born. So, but as you can see, cheaper and cheaper and cheaper alcohol would just drive mead out of business. Now, that's not to say that mead wasn't drunk anywhere. Now, your high society, yeah, you're going to be drinking your fancy wines and stuff. Your poor people, you're going to be drinking beers and ales and rum. Your gins also. Um, but there's still evidence of a knowledge of mead that's being passed around. It's showing up in cookbooks. People are talking about specific recipes. So it's still around and being drunk in well into, like, say, around 1800. And there people are really fancying it up. They're putting lemon peel in it. They're doing, flavoring it. But remember, all you need is honey, water, and yeast, and you don't even need to add yeast. There you go, 3. um, so that's kind of where mead died out. Now it's getting interest again. I think that you'll find that in rural communities it didn't necessarily die out as hard because if you're just going to make your own, especially in areas in Scandinavia, I don't think it ever died out completely. But yeah, that's kind of how um, it all turned out. That's how mead came to be. That's how it. And I didn't even cover here. I think there's evidence of it being drunk in the areas of Persia. I think there's evidence of it in points farther east. I just don't know that history so well. There's probably evidence of it in North America, in South America, pre-Columbian exchange. I just don't know that history so well. But yeah, that's just like a snapshot of mead. So, if you have questions, I have that form that I put under these videos and I put under like the Hitman videos and whatnot. Go ahead and send them to me. They don't have to be super specific. It could be like this. Tell me about mead. I want to know more about the history of mead. More than happy to do that. And yeah, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and send me more questions. I'll talk to you guys next time. All right, bye-bye.